Now, I use science notebooks. I don't have one here, but you know, the coiled ones, I find they work the best. But the kids would just pull out their notebook, and we would write down what we've learned in a variety of ways. So I say to the kids, this is how part of this program has evolved too, because when I started, I had the notes. I was the giver of the knowledge. But I've learned, and it was such a powerful lesson, that it's so much more authentic when these words come from the kids. So I say to the kids, okay, so we are working with integers and, adding and subtracting integers, combining them. What are some notes we can give ourselves to help us remember what we've done today? And so the kids will start to tell me what we should write down. And on a smartboard, which is ideal, or a normal whiteboard, we start to compile notes as a class. So having said this, the idea of notes can kind of seem scary in an inclusive classroom, but I want everybody to have a hard copy of something to take away with them, but I don't necessarily care if they're the ones writing it. So at the beginning of the year, I encourage everybody to try. Most of the time, kids can do this. What we might do, though, for some kids is, as I'm writing it on the board, I'm also writing it on a piece of paper, and they copy it off that piece of paper, or they copy off their neighbors. Sometimes that, looking up at the board and then looking down at their paper is hard to do. I've had a student before that really just wanted to listen to the notes. So we would do a voice recording. He would read the notes afterwards, and he would just draw out the examples in his notebook. So he had a combination of audio with some concrete notes, but he didn't really write very many words down. It's ideal with the smartboard because you can record everything and then you just print it off. So if a student was missing, they can get the notes the next day. But you just play with that and you use your judgment call. And I've never had a student not participate in this piece. This is where the red pen and the ruler comes in. So I have that science coiled notebook, and the kids do their notes in that. This is a copy of one of my students' notes. The notes book doesn't leave the classroom. If they need some of their notes to take home, I would photocopy it for them or print it out for them from the smartboard, and they'd take that home. Their notes book never leaves the classroom until the end of the year. So it's in that coiled book. At the end of the year in June, we rip out all the pages, we kind of cut off those trimmings, we make a table of contents, and we organize it into a duotang. And the kids take that with them. And I've had multiple students and teachers come back and ask me about the notes. Kids will tell me they hide it in their lockers and they go out and look at it at break, which I don't know why they don't just take it into class. But it's a working document as well. So I really do make an effort all year long. When kids get stuck, the first place we go is their math notes, or talk to a neighbor. If you still can't figure it out, go through your math notes and see what you can find. So everybody gets a copy of this, and if kids are missing pages, we just photocopy from someone else and we give everyone a complete set. So they make their table of content, they have their notes. So titles are underlined with a red pen and a ruler. This is on BEDMAS. So we do brackets, we put an example in, we do exponents. What does exponents look like? Division, multiplication. And so this is just their notes, and they have them. They have little drawing examples in here. This is all kids' words that I've just put on the board and they've copied. It's just a great thing to have. I have talked to some teachers when I was doing learning support. Teachers were like, well, now I have a set of notes and that's great, I can just use this. I have never ever used one year's notes with a different year's class, because it should be from the students. And I don't always go in the same order when I'm teaching things. I really like, where are the kids at? What do they need? Something I do want to mention is when we use the whiteboards, if I saw students struggling, because they hold it up for me all the time. So if I saw students struggling, I know that that's the first person I go, touch base with as kids are writing down their notes. I'm, walking around the room and touching base with kids and talking to them about what's been happening and what they get and what they don't get, and kind of rewording things if I need to and that kind of thing. So, we take our notes down, and then that piece is over. And then we do an assignment. So I am not a big believer in homework. I think especially homework in math, because for those kids that are anxious about it, it's so stressful to get through just a normal math class. I don't want to have that stress carry over at home. So I try and make assignments really user-friendly, and I really try to get information from the kids. So when we're finished the notes on the classroom whiteboard, we'll just pretend that this is, the smart board or whatever. Title it, we underline it with a red pen and a ruler, we put the date on it, is really important. And then I would give them usually between 5 and 10 questions depending on the time, because remember, I want them to be able to finish in the time we have left in class. I would say to kids, give me a number between 0 and -15. And so kids start to give me numbers. I try and keep numbers, the first couple times we do it, numbers are workable so that they can draw the discs until we get to the point where we figure out how to do it without using the discs. And when I say we figure it out, we figure it out. I don't give them those rules. These are things that we kind of figure out as a class and move forward with from there. So kids write down the assignment and then they start working on it. So this is all happening in class, and this is it would be in a notebook like this. Okay? So the final part of my program is the assessment piece. I need to talk about that because I think that it's actually not something I can show you as much as it's just sets up the atmosphere in the room. So I use class profiles, had learned in Jen Cates' class. They're just great. So curriculum outcomes at the top, or the skills that I want them to know that we're working on, kids' names down here, and then who has it and who doesn't. So often in those class profiles, I use those 10-15 minute whiteboard activities to determine who's where they need to be and who do I need to touch base with individually. So as the kids do their 5 to 10 questions, I'm calling them up in groups, or individually. So if I saw a kid really struggling here, you might have 1 or 2 kids, everyone would start working and I'd say, Sally, can you come see me when you have your first question done? And then usually what I do is, because we work in tables instead of individual desks, I usually say, this table come up after 2 questions are done. You guys come up after 4. Anyone can come up if they need to see me. Ask a neighbor, talk it out, blah, blah, blah. And so kids would come up and I conference with them. So, most of the kids, after all of this scaffolding, you're looking at it. Yeah, you got it. Do you understand it? Do you have any questions? Kate, good, go. And away they go. Some kids do need a little bit more support. They might have made 1 or 2 errors, and you just make sure that they understand, where those are coming from. And this is all done with conversation. At no point in time do I put like big check marks or red X's on their work. If they have something wrong, we just try again and we do it together. Like they're sitting with me and we walk it through together so that I can make sure that they, are thinking about things in a way that makes mathematical sense. Having said that, even though I don't put marks on theirs, on my class profile and in my teacher book, I have the students listed. I have the students' names all listed, and I usually give a score from 1 to 5. So 5 is they have it, they've mastered it. 3 is, they're still making errors, but they kind of know where they're at. And, a 1 is they're really struggling, which, you don't see this very often. You do, but not very often. And usually those 1s turns into 3s and 5s as time goes on, and whatever's in between. So when kids are there, if they just were fine, you get it, good, got it, we have a little conversation, they get a 5. Lots of kids get 3s in the beginning, and then those kids that are at the 1 or 2s, you're spending a little bit more time with. Okay, so to conclude the assessment piece, people often ask, well, when you're conferencing with kids, what are the rest of the kids doing? Because essentially you're only talking to 1 student at a time. But you'd be surprised how much it does all kind of fall into place and work out. It's really similar to that idea of like setting up centers in your classroom or a project-based classroom, in that it's a lot of work in the beginning. Get kids to the point where they can take the initiative to work on something else once they're finished. One nice thing about working in a middle years classroom is that I teach the same kids all day and all subject areas. When they're finished, talking with me, they definitely have something else to do. It's not like kids are just hanging around. Having said that, we always have math projects on the go, which I include in the appendix, some examples of the projects that we have. We also have centers, going on all the time, and these are often cross-curricular projects that go on, but can also lend themselves to subject-specific classrooms where the teachers only teach math. I'm going to include some great math projects in the appendix for you guys to look at of the exam, so the written part of the assignment. Another thing that people ask about a lot is like, how do parents react, because the kids aren't getting necessarily, like a 3 out of a 5 back on a piece of paper. This program doesn't really leave anyone behind. It's all about, we all have to kind of understand this to get to the next point. And the program that I've described today is a significant piece of what we do in the classroom, but then there are a ton of other little things that we do that I'll also include in the appendix. And I'll give you an example right now. Like, sometimes we play the telephone game. So I'll put 2 questions on the board. And so this would be one example, and, this would be another example. And I'd say to the kids, pick a partner. And the kids would pick a partner. They have to sit back to back, so their chairs would be kind of facing back to back like this, so they can't see each other, and they would have their whiteboards there, and one person would be the friend phoning for help. They'd pretend they were at at their own homes phoning the other friend for help. So one person would phone and say, hey, I'm doing my homework right now, and they'd pick one of these questions, and this is the question and I can't figure out how to solve it. Can you walk me through the steps? So the other person, without seeing them, has to walk them through the steps. So, we do kinds of things like that all the time, just to have fun with it and without that pressure piece. So it kind of appeases everybody, and I've never had a parent, question that piece of it. Not that it would never happen, depending on the, the atmosphere or your clientele or, the parent or whatever the issue is. The program is so well organized that I think that if I ever was questioned about it, I would feel quite comfortable explaining why I do what I do. So that's the program. I'm going to conclude now. And, it is kind of structured, but it does work for kids. And I think the structure helps to decrease the anxiety for kids. It's just my personal opinion. I just want to mention that we do have the cross-curricular piece and centers and projects and all of that kind of stuff as an aside to this. Another thing to mention in the conclusion is just that the notes piece, I kind of listed several strategies for maybe students with exceptionalities or struggling math learners. However, those adaptations are for anyone who wants to take advantage of them. So it's not like, I just say, Bobby, you have a hard time with this, you do it this way. I just kind of throw it out there, and I'll have kids choosing which way works best for them, which is really nice to see. In this math program, comprehension is the key rather than following rules. So sometimes those kids that have done traditionally really, really well in math, because they're great rule followers, struggle because all of a sudden now they have to be able to explain their thinking and share it with others. So it's kind of interesting to see kind of kids go through that piece, but it all works out in the end. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it.